She's running into the room. I don't know her. But with a bag of buying lands, just sort of look her over. We had a drink or two, well maybe three. And then suddenly she starts telling me her life story. She's
guys, I've been waiting a long time to do this and we're running out of nice weather, but I thought it would be fun today. Let's do a quick look at the 1959 versus 1960 Plymouth, in this case Plymouth Fury. There's a certain amount of information available about both of these models, and I know Chrysler made a big deal about the 1960 model being a completely redesigned chassis with the unibody construction. I always assumed that by comparison the 1959 model would be kind of junk. So I was a bit surprised when I ended up with one at how good they are, and I thought maybe we should do a kind of side-by-side and have a look at the inside-outside drive lines, go for a drive, and see if we really think it was that big of an improvement. So we have one largely original car, one rebuilt car, but they're both running same engine, same drivetrain, same body style, unmodified cars with the original drum brakes and correct 750/14 bias ply tires, both in very roadworthy condition. So let's have a quick look. We'll start at 1959 and just kind of go over the exterior, and then we'll have a look at the other one here. We might as well start at the front. Here in 1959, this was the last year of a 3-year design cycle at Chrysler. 57 was the debut of this super low slung forward look car. The Virgil Exner designed 1955 cars are considered the first of the forward look cars. 1959 was a pretty substantial redesign from the 57/58, which are almost, you know, to the lay person indistinguishable. Other than some detail changes. 59, you got completely different exterior sheet metal except for doors, and the roofs are similar, but we'll get into that. At the front we have pretty intricate grille. Always thought it was weird that they stopped the grille for the ornament. Here we see the very last time that the Plymouth sailing ship Mayflower appeared on any Plymouth car, up until the rehashed 1990s badging. But, so you see the rocket ship theme forward look and the Plymouth Mayflower for the final time in 1959. We got very lovely script here on the side. 4 headlights became the standard in 1958, and we have a lower grille air intake, slightly bashed up on this car, but again, original car. Beautiful stainless trim around here, and very similar theme to 50s, actually very exaggerated theme from 57/8, where they really have cut the fenders back huge here. 57 and such kind of down like that, so in 59 they really cut them back, and they continued the grille theme around the side. Really cool. Continuation of the cone shaped 57 wheel cover here. I think 58 they flattened it off. 59 they went back to the cone shape, but they put these little divots in it there. That's a nice looking wheel cover. Coming down the side, we see this was a Chrysler staple for years. The trim with the, what do they call this, anodized textured aluminum insert here. Really cool. 1959, Plymouth Fury became a regular production model, not a halo model. So the Plymouth Fury basically became occupied the same slot as the 1958 and older Belvedere. And so if you wanted the top of the line car, you got a Sport Fury, which gave you an even wider molding here with a big emblem there, similar to what we see in 60. The last year of the refrigerator style door handles. These were supposed to be gone by then, but apparently there was trouble getting the replacements available in sufficient quantity. So we see the last of these. It's kind of cool. Your thumb goes on there and kind of pushes it out for you. Nice. And they do have a really nice feel, actually. I know from having lots of these cars that these were prone to breaking and failing. So they were, I think, trying to replace them for quite a while. We got a nice rocker molding. This was a pretty trimmed up car. As you can see, stone guard here. That was pretty standard equipment back in the day. And the only thing slightly disappointing for 59 was they lost the gas lid that was styled to match the fin in 57 and 8. So 59, you get this pickup truck looking rectangle here, which is kind of too bad. Would have been a nice opportunity to carry that theme, but I guess somebody got a hold of that idea and nixed it. This would be the last year for many years where the gas filler was located on the side of the car instead of the back. Cool emblem here, really awesome. Completely different style of font from the Plymouth emblem, which is repeated on the back here with the little V. I'm not sure if that was Fury only or V8 only, but there it is. Also on the deck lid, the first appearance of the famous love it or hate it spare tire, phony spare tire thing. There's again the little Plymouth Mayflower for the final time on the spare tire cover. Of course, it is dummy as dummy gets. There's nothing to do with the tire in there, it's in the trunk. 59, we see the taillights move to a horizontal theme, and the fins are cut back this way instead of that way, so that's kind of cool. And the oval shaped taillights, we see also continuation of the scalloped rear panel, which was a Plymouth kind of thing from the early 50s. That was the kind of a styling theme that Plymouth had throughout that era. So yeah, a nicely integrated way to do that. A bit weird that they didn't take any opportunity to light up the tops of the fins, but that's how they did it. And it's a nice looking piece. Reverse lights, even though they're here, there's no bulbs in there and there's no wiring for them. Reverse lights were still optional. This car does not have them. What do we see at the back? A pretty plain bumper. Nice little bumper guards. I don't know if all the models had that. Probably not. Fury's got bumper guards. Go out on a limb. We get to the windshield here. 1959 hardtops use the convertible windshield from the previous years. So kind of a nice way to update the car without having to tool up new glass. The earlier model, the windshield's a little shorter and doesn't have this compound curve. Still got the opposed wipers here. And in this car's case, just a single mirror. Again, this was a pretty base model Fury. No power steering, no power brakes. Pretty basic model. But a couple of nice options too, which we'll get into. Using the same roof panel as 7 and 8, except the front has been modified for the bigger windshield. Rear windows are interchangeable for all those 3 years, as I believe are the quarter windows, and the doors are also interchangeable 7, 8, 9, other than hole punching and whatever. So overall, 59, obviously a facelift year. You could argue that it is not as pure as the 7 or 8, and I wouldn't argue with you. It's I think if it wasn't for the 7 and 8, the 59 would be remembered as a classic, but it is it's obviously a facelift of the previously highly acclaimed design. It's a little glorpy, but really overall I still think a pretty attractive car. Now, we want to talk about glorpy. Let's go to what I think has to be one of the most striking front ends ever put on a car. 1960 Plymouth Fury. Where to even start on this thing? These things are monsters. At the front of the car we see very simple extruded slash punched aluminium grille. Lovely separate headlight bezels here. And this car has the optional bumper guard, which is actually, I think, quite attractive, but it does make the emblem look as though it is installed in the wrong place. I assure you it is not, and I'm not moving it. We've got similar theme, certainly, and I really think that they just nailed it on these letters, which stick out almost a half an inch at the bottom, but they present vertical face to the front of the car, and as the hood actually rolls backwards quite a ways. And so we see this trim starting here, and this line continues all the way around behind the wheel, and then all the way the length of the car, and all the way to the back by the bumper, and really goes up the taillight and comes all the way back to here if you follow that one line. So that's pretty cool. Probably one of the coolest emblems ever put on a car for 1960 Plymouth. The Fury emblem with the little star on the end. I mean, it just doesn't get much more outrageous than that. It's, this is the most Marvin the Martian car I think ever done. For many years these cars were kind of regarded as like the high watermark of bad taste glorpmobiles. I don't know, I think the car has come into its own now. I think they should be recognized as what they were, which was an expression of a successful company having some fun and an optimistic, outlook for the future. Of course, that never happened, but nevertheless, these cars are, they're having some fun with this, I think. Certainly, there's awkward elements to the design, but I think to disregard the interesting parts is maybe a bit short-sighted. We see the gigantic mirrors here, also super space age everywhere. This central strut here is where the adjuster cables go up, so that is strictly functional there, one of the few functional pieces on the exterior of the car. And of course the famous Plymouth stone shields here. These were an option, and I'm really happy I got them because, if you're going all out, you might as well go all out. So got those, and the 1960 Plymouth wheel cover. Pretty tame compared to the rest of the car, and certainly pretty tame compared to some of what Chrysler put on their other cars for 1960. Fairly restrained by the standards of the rest of the car. Side molding there, and very tricky transition here from a vertical face on the molding to it being a horizontal trim to the top of the car. So you see that this piece here is extremely interesting to me as a nerd, but you can see that it starts out, and then this rolled edge here gets further and further towards the center until at the back of the molding that rolled edge becomes the top. And that is a really tricky design thing that they pulled off. It doesn't look awkward or weird. It actually looks really good to me. So the doors being a corporate situation, a lot of these cars had essentially the center section. One of the reasons I was able to build this car out of a Dodge is that they shared a lot of parts, including the doors. So generally, and you see this here as well, when you have these giant corporate cars that have to fit 7 or 10 different models in there, you'll see that all of the fun is had here and here, and the door is common. That's why there's essentially no body line in the door at all, because it would mean it would be difficult to adapt it to any other model. 1960, the windshield, very similar in theme to 5789. Actually, a lot of people would not know that these are completely different cars with very few interchangeable parts from just looking at the overall style of it, and I think that might have been part of the plan. Oh, I think one of the most obvious things we're missing is one of the very few times when you see the two-toning incorporated on the front fenders and headlights to match the roof. Very odd. I think it was maybe meant to recall cars of the 1930s, which had sweeping fenders in a contrasting color. 59, 60, 61, 2, Exner becoming an early proponent of what later became, I think, retro-futurism, where you're incorporating classical themes like the spare tire lid and the different colored fenders into a thoroughly modern design. It's pretty outrageous, but that's what they were trying to do. They were just having some fun. I think it's really fun. I would never have done this car without putting the two-tone on the front, because it's not like we're trying to blend in. So let's go for it, right? Let's have some fun. Very similar themes here, similar here. One thing we see on the roof, we go from here with the full frame car, a very small thin C-pillar, whereas here, 1960, go to a unibody car, much heavier C-pillar. There's a lot of structure in here which necessitated a heavier C-pillar, but they made up for it with one of the biggest back windows ever put in a car. I just think that this back window is just awesome. Apparently they would kind of give people in the back seat a sunstroke, but it was worth it for how cool it looked. Can't really discuss the 1959 or 60 Plymouth without pointing the most obvious thing out, which is the gigantic tail fins. This would be the last year that Plymouth put this theme on their cars, and they called them stabilizers or whatever, but you know, let's face it, they were just there for extra awesomeness. I just love them. I think they look awesome. I just love when you look at it from the side, just the sheer size of this panel, and with this gigantic thing. This is the size of a curling rock, you guys. This thing is huge. That is just epic. If you don't like tail fins, this is not your kind of car. Neither is this really, but for 1960, they really went over the top with these, and you know, it'll never be repeated. These are not coming back. These are not a fad that's ever going to be resurrected, I don't think. And here again, another iteration of the concave rear deck panel for Plymouth, and the first year, this way, yeah, the first year of the rear fill tank. The bumper went from being a one-piece bumper to being a three-piece, so they could sculpt these massive ends on it and integrate it back to a vertical theme on the taillight. And this car has functioning reverse lights, and that's just a reflector, it doesn't light up. So that's just whatever they felt like doing there. I don't think that really adds to it, but there it is. Continuing with the crazy spare tire theme. Very, very similar to the previous one, but not interchangeable. Slightly different shape to it, and the sailing ship is gone forever now. Another handwriting style emblem. This thing is very huge and heavy. It's fantastic. Very similar in theme to the previous year, but just more so. Here we see 1960, the first year of the non-refrigerator style handles, and this theme, these would run for years. And they're very reliable, and they're well made, and there you go. Another fantastic feature, Fury only for 1960, is this gigantic washboard panel here. Done in stainless and very tightly fitted to the quarter panel. This was fitting this, in the case of this particular car, fitting this to entirely handmade panel was tricky, and there was a lot of hours in this little section of this car, but it was worth it because I just think that looks fantastic. It runs along here, it's joined here, and the join is as good as you can get, but the two pieces are slightly different stampings, probably at different plants. I've picked them from different cars, and that continues along to the front. This was not unique to Chrysler, GM and Ford. Certainly the 61 Galaxy has an even possibly more epic bit of stainless on it. I know 59 Buick, they did a similar theme on the top of the line Electra model. Really, you know, that's another thing that's not coming back. Unfortunately, they had to punch holes in the body to put the clips in, and then they would trap dirt and rust anyway. A lot of them, certainly this car, when you took the panel off, there was nothing behind it. Back at the front here, we can see a lower valence panel with a little air slot cut in it there. Less elaborate than the 57-8 models, which had the bumper sitting a little higher with a much more pronounced lower valence there. Here we've got a nice V in the bumper, which is I think quite attractive. Bumper on the front is a one-piece and with the optional guard, and even the white two-toning extends to the hood and the bottoms of the fenders here, and the lower grille panel is also painted in the contrasting white. That would have been a pretty elaborate painting process at the factory to mass produce literally hundreds of thousands of these absolutely outrageous cars. I don't know how many Fury hardtops they made. When you consider today the amount of hand fitting and labor that it would have taken to put this together new, much less what it took me to put it back together. I mean, it took a year just to put the trim back on this thing. All right, with that said, let's have a look at the interiors. Okay, the inside of 1959 Plymouth Fury. See immediately how the door, this is actually a vinyl, and it matches the actual fabric on the seats. So that was a pretty tricky thing they did. Extensive use of highly reflective, I don't know what this is, it's like a silver vinyl here. Again, this car being an unrestored car, so there's a little bit of wear and tear on this and that, but not a big deal. I really like the combo on this car, a yellow with silver interior. Also interesting that this car is not two-toned on the exterior when most of them would have been. 1 year only, 1959 dash, fun, symmetrical, with HVAC on one side and shifter on the other side. You can see here something quite bizarre, which I think they remedied soon after, is that the drive is on top, followed by neutral, followed by reverse. So, and then 2 and 1. So you do not want to, and they painted reverse red, just so, anyway, if you're driving along and you're in drive, and you want to shift down, it's very easy to hit this one. Ask me how I know. Apparently Chrysler built a safety into the transmission so that if you hit reverse while the car was moving, it would bypass, which luckily for me it did. And then I realized what I'd done, and you can hit 2. For gauges, we have fuel and temperature, and there's an ammeter and an oil idiot light here, and 120 speedo, and well, let's just fire it up here. Oh, can't fire it up and drive. Get that safety going. Kind of fun. The signal light indicators on the dash are extremely bright. It won't show on the camera, but when you're driving this thing at night, it lights up your whole face. So those are cool. They're very bright, and I don't know, it's not dark enough to see the instrumentation. We've got a electric wiper here, so vacuum wipers being banished by this point. Radio there with both knobs on the one side. Cigarette lighter, naturally, and tiny little ashtray. Little disappointing for 1959. You'd kind of want like something twice that size. That, and this car has a clock, which is nice. It doesn't work, but I don't care what time it is anyway. No padded dash here. I don't know if it was optional. I think it was. This car does not have it. The late 50s Plymouth Chrysler theme of having the mirror on the dash present here. Of course, the most obvious thing you're looking at here is this fantastic steering wheel with the transparent plastic top and bottom. This one in somehow perfect condition. This car must have been kept inside. And we have a padded center section with the horn ring there with the little thumb pushers there, which is fun. And yeah, actually a pretty nice wheel. It's a little bit ovoid, you can see. That would be a theme for the next few years on these. Got
leg room.
Carpet, lots of leg room. The car is huge inside. Oh, one of my favorite features of these era of cars, of these Plymouths, is the headliners, which were some of the first use of a molded headliner, perforated center section, and these beautiful chrome trim strips running front to back. This one is beautiful, again, I think because it was inside most of its life, except for when I drive it very occasionally. And I guess the reason for the molded headliner was that these cars had such a low roofline that they didn't have the headroom to put a conventional suspended fabric headliner in, which you will find in the same car, if it was a four-door sedan, would have the regular style headliner. So this being a really neat two-door hardtop only, and probably pretty hard to find in good condition. So I was very happy to see that. Back seat, pretty conventional stuff. Silver with a kind of a interesting fabric there, and the parcel tray, really pretty standard stuff. Two little buttons in, not really a big deal. Interestingly to me, that white around the back window is the rubber. There's no trim around the back window in these cars. It's just literally the rubber is painted white. It's also the same in the 1960. It needs repainting in the 1960 car. This car I'm not doing any paint work on at all because I want this car to stay original. Back seat, not quite as roomy, certainly not as roomy as if it was a Dodge or a Chrysler. This was back when Plymouth cars still had a 2-inch shorter wheelbase than a Dodge and 4 inches shorter than a Chrysler, or something to that effect. So that's what you get inside. The park brake, there was no park on the transmission up until 60, I don't know, 62 or so. They put a sliding lever for park. So these, you just have neutral with a park brake. Headlights there, everything pretty conventional really by this time, and a very neat little vent window, push there, and out you go. Before, no cranks on these guys, but a nice little setup there, and all still working nicely. Fun feature of this particular car is the original owner's notes there. I think the car has a trouble with the fuel gauge, so he was keeping track of his mileage, but that has been in there since whatever, 1972 by the looks of it. So I'm just leaving that there. We're not touching that. And that was the last time the original owner filled it up, was at 54,000, and we are now at 55,000. So it hasn't gotten a lot of miles in the last 50 something years, but we're gonna put some on it today. Let's go have a look at the inside of the 1960 Plymouth. For 1960, a completely different animal inside. Really, the first thing you see, to me, first use of a vacuum molded plastic on the door panels. So your door panel is actually a sculptured piece for the first time in 1960, at least for a Plymouth. Other cars probably did it before, but maybe not. Anyway, that is a fantastic piece of design. There's a long armrest with a piece of stainless in there, and color matched on the bottom to the interior. On this top of the line model, we've got a chrome plated panel up here. All of this is chrome here. So the door, done in a metallic blue vinyl with white, and you can see the continuation of the chrome theme on the upholstery here. This car, the upholstery has been redone, so this pattern, the fabric is not original, but the layout more or less is. So it was fabric, vinyl, gold piping in between. Originally this was vertical heat pressed vinyl, but I've sewn it in a slightly modified pattern, and ditto in the back. Here you see the rubber around the back window in its unrestored state. I still got to get some white paint on that and finish that up. So we're looking at the dash, we see a pretty outrageous setup. Again, symmetrical for the driver, HVAC on the right. On the left here we see they've changed the controls. Reverse is now on the left. So on a modern car you'd have park, reverse, neutral, drive, 2-1. So at least they've gone with that theme here. 59 was a bit weird. This car is a remote mirror, and otherwise pretty conventional layout downstairs. Still with the mirror on the dash, and in this case a padded dash. This was an option. That's a pretty rare piece to still have in decent condition. That is original to this car. All of this is original paint. I tried to maintain a little bit of the original condition of the car if I could, including the steering wheel, which is not in great shape, but it is the original wheel to the car. And I think they called, what did they call this? Oh, this was called the Arrow wheel, I think. Yeah, the Arrow wheel. So just super Bugs Bunny, Marvin the Martian stuff here. 2 little thumb things instead of 4, and not only transparent with gold sparkle flake in it. So maybe one day we'll remold this, but for now it serves the purpose. But pretty outrageous steering wheel. That's where the clock would be. I actually have a clock for this car. I'll probably put it in there. Here we got temperature and fuel, so oil and amp up here, and then the signal lights there. Let's see those guys go. We'll fire it up. And there we go. Yeah, so those are nice. Makes a nice sound. Push button HVAC here. Temperature. Pretty conventional stuff. And a radio ashtray. There we go. Still pretty small. This was optional for Fury only. This lovely, most of the cheaper models didn't have that. That's original to the car. It's not in great shape, but I didn't have a better one. So this car, we have power steering, so that's kind of nice. Other than that, these 2 cars are spec'd pretty close to the same. So we'll just have a look under the hood of each car. There's not really much to see. They're very similar, but we'll have a quick look. For 1959, we see the Plymouth 318 Folly head. This is the A block engine as opposed to the B block, which was the 350, 361, 383. So this was the base V8 in this car. There was a flathead 6-cylinder. There was also standard equipment, so this was an optional engine. It's a standard Carter 2-barrel. It is a 12-volt car. Generators up until 61. Generator, single pot master. You know, pretty standard stuff. This is this engine's never been out, never been rebuilt, and it seems to be fine. I don't know much about the history of it before I got it, but for the amount of use that it gets, it seems to be just fine. Should probably check the oil for going for a drive. Oil's good enough for today. Nice that you can replace the heater core without tearing the interior out of the car. Heater core is behind there, and I know because I just had to do it. And otherwise, pretty conventional stuff. Very easy to work on, and very reliable cars. Honestly, if these cars hadn't been so rust prone, most of them would still be on the road. These things are just hammers. They, you know, Plymouth taxi cabs with this engine would rack up hundreds of thousands of miles, but eventually the tin worm got to 99% of them. This one, to have its original paint and still have headlight eyebrows, they were very rust prone, so very rare to find a nice original one today. We'll have a quick look under 1960, but it's not really that much different. It's essentially exactly the same engine, to the point of being interchangeable. It's the same, right? Slightly different air cleaner for 60. You got your old washer bag here, which they ran right up till mid 60s, I think. Single pot master, in this case power steering, and other than that, very conventional, very you know, just a Plymouth 318. I think at this point we should probably go for a drive. We'll start with 1959. One of my favorite parts about this car is driving it. You can see from the sound, this is before Chrysler's famous gear reduction starter, so you don't get that kind of weird sound that Chrysler cars were famous for within a few years. This is one of the last of the direct drive starters. So we're gonna go and punch D. And should we get some heat going there, Bunny?
Mm-hmm.
Get a little heat going here. Yeah. Let's get out of the yard here first.
Kind of floaty.
It's a little floaty, but
It's a nice floaty.
it's supposed to be a bit floaty. The first thing I noticed, and I guess it's a little too late for first impressions for me because I've had the car for a while. I don't drive it much, but I have driven it enough. But I was really struck the first time I drove it by actually how solid it felt and how well it handled. And again, on the original size and type of tires, I don't really upgrade my cars if I don't absolutely have to. I really prefer to drive them the way that they were manufactured. So I thought it would be a fun opportunity to do a video like this because I don't think too many people have these two cars, both with the same drivetrain, both in original condition. So let's see. As for power, I mean, it certainly pulls well enough. It's these were 230 gross at around 310 foot-pounds, I think, something like that. The torque flight internally, I think, very similar right through to the end of the production. So this is one of the best 3-speed automatics ever made. They are very tough and they work very well. And so, other than the manual steering, the car feels very modern. We don't have an opportunity here, and I wouldn't anyway. I'm not going to go out and thrash these on a racetrack and try and get hard numbers. That was not the point of the video. I think if you did, the 60 would probably put a better number down on a racetrack, but that was not really the point. The brakes in each car feel very nice. You hardly need power brakes in these things for normal driving. I hardly have to push on the pedal at all. The cars are very torquey off the line and shifts very well. I like to wait till it gets into second and then step on it and then do most of my accelerating in second. It just feels really good. The car, surprisingly, corners quite flat. The seating position is reclined. You're very low to the ground and your legs are almost straight out in front of you, as opposed to cars 10 years older than this where you're sitting essentially on a on a couch. And they took a lot out of the seats to build these cars in 1957, 8, 9. They had to take the seat height way down to get the cool low roof line, so they sacrificed a certain amount of that, and therefore you had to move the seat back to give your legs room. So you actually end up with quite a sporty driving position. You know, I remember reading the contemporary advertising and they would be like, oh, it drives like a sports car, and I remember thinking, yeah, whatever. But when you drive the car after driving contemporary cars and slightly earlier cars, it really does on a proper twisty road. I think the drivers of the time would have been absolutely blown away by the capabilities of this more or less bone stock family sedan. These things probably unequal for domestic car handling at the time. For pure road holding and handling, these things would have been very hard to beat in the day. I would certainly put it up against a contemporary GM or Ford car. I have driven Miles' 1960 GM car, and I have one on the way for myself, and it's not like I don't like those cars, but they are a lot floatier than the Chrysler of the same vintage. These things handle unbelievably well for what they are. The manual steering you don't really notice once you're moving, but we can, it picks up and goes. Okay, Feels
Yeah.
good, eh? Yeah, it really
I was like
goes.
pulled
Yeah.
back in my seat.
Yeah, and very quiet inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't hear the engine at all. You got a little bit of wind noise, which I think is pretty typical of these cars of this era. But that's about it. And the track, it tracks like it couldn't really be better. So for me, the biggest impression was just how good these full frame cars were. And it doesn't hurt that it's a low mileage car in good condition.
What is the fuel economy like?
These are on the highway, low 20s, 22 miles to the gallon, kind of 21, 22. Pretty typical of cars of that era. It's got a very tall highway gear rear end in it, so it's probably a 293. So the engine's just idling at highway speeds. These things will certainly do 75 miles an hour all day with almost no effort at all. You want to keep it below 65 if you want good gas mileage, but very few people did back then anyway. So we'll take this at twice the posted speed here.
Okay.
See, just no roll, no nothing. And, yeah, so that's the most surprising part of the whole thing. A very easy car to drive. I have to say, 59 Plymouth, pretty tough act to follow. So let's see if you could have been talked out of a 59 in 1960. We'll take this guy for a drive. Okay, let's see what next year's model is all about here. First thing I notice, I'm sitting up a little higher. I think the seat is actually a little higher. Because of the unibody, the structure of the car got a little taller. Whereas 1959, the hardtop had a completely different roofline, windshield, and everything else. In 1960, the height of the roof is the same for all models. Not sure how much of that was cost saving and how much of it was engineering, but the car, you sit up a little taller. Now again, fully redone seat and everything, so it's kind of split the difference. You know, not quite as race car as the 59. Nevertheless, extremely comfortable. Still no seat belts. Seat belts would not be standard equipment for several years yet, so don't have to worry about any of that pesky bullshit. Let's see, brakes, everybody's good. And this is a power steering car with manual brakes. And a very slightly different park brake setup. Let's go around the block in this guy. I actually like the combination of power steering and manual brakes. I don't really like the power brakes on these Chrysler drum brake cars of this era. They're really touchy, so I actually like this combination with the power steering and manual brakes. So let's go for a little drive, which we put a little heat on, Bun. There we go.
You can feel the road a bit more on this car.
You're right. You feel the road a little more. Not really significantly more noise. Actually, this is the first time I've ever driven these two cars back to back either, so it's actually pretty fun for me too. But I've never really noticed that this car is definitely, what would you say, a little tighter, and I think it's a function of course, of it being a unibody car with no isolation between the body and chassis. Later C-body cars, starting in '72, actually had rubber isolators between the subframe and the body. but these early ones did not. The subframe is bolted right to the bottom of, or underneath the seat here. They made quite a deal out of the massive improvements in torsional and beam strength on these unibody cars, and I've no reason to doubt it. In a straight up handling situation, this car almost certainly be the winner. I don't know, for cruising around, the differences are pretty negligible. They're both extremely comfortable to ride in. They both have really good heaters. You want? Can I turn that down?
Yeah.
Okay. It's actually getting quite warm in here. Wasn't sure that I would, but I really like the rectangular steering wheel. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's very different from any other car. And if you keep your hands on it like this while you're driving, and this wheel was only available with power steering, because the other wheel, if you're doing a lot more of this, it was easier to handle a rounder wheel. But I think these cars got a faster ratio box, so most of your driving can be done without taking your hands and doing any of this. So the wheel actually makes a little more sense when you're driving than when you're just looking at it. So kind
it's
of
a
fun.
shame they got rid of those steering wheels, because how pretty are they?
Yeah,
now
it's
we've
really
just
fun.
got these ugly cushion.
Yeah, just
pillowy
black
things.
blobs. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Cool, eh?
That is super cool.
Yeah, it's neat. It just rolls up. Each line fills up. So that, I think, 60, 61 only for Plymouth. That was one of the more fun bits. And again, I think all reflective of a company that was kind of having some fun. Now, they probably lived to regret how much fun they had with these cars, because the trouble with things that are super stylish is that when they go out of style, they really go out of style. And within a couple of years, you had a hard time giving these away.
They became MC Hammer pants.
Yeah, exactly. These were the MC Hammer pants of 1960. And so, unfortunately, it meant a near zero survival rate, because when these cars were 5 to 10 years old, if it got a flat tire, it was going right in the crusher. It was impossible to pretend that this car was not out of style. Like a 1960 Pontiac, it still looked pretty good. I mean, other than the wraparound windshield, the car was not too flash, and you know, still looked quite good at 5 or 10 years old. But these, like if you put a 1965 Plymouth Fury next to this, you can imagine the guy trying to trade this in on a 65, he was not getting any money for it. There's other iconic cars of this era, and they all kind of suffered the same thing of going through a pretty extended period of being unsellable. 59 Chevs and Buicks, any of the cars with really exaggerated, you know, Looney Tunes styling, you know, the very things that made them attractive when they were new, which was, you know, just how stylish they were the things that consigned them all to the junkyard within 10 years. One of the things that it gets overlooked because of how outrageous they are is, again, how good of a car these were. Like, these are very tough cars. I think the shifter's easier to use in this one. I have to say, overall, I like the steering feel better. For just cruising around, the ride of the yellow car, I think, is a little more posh, a little more comfy, a little more isolated, if that's what you're after. The visibility in each car is terrific. The mirror you get used to, it looks a little odd. The fender mirror, all you get to see really is a big tail fin right in the middle of it. So that's, oh yeah, there's a nice shot. I would say, for all intents, that the acceleration and more or less driving characteristics are similar enough as to be a wash. I mean, I don't know how much the cars weigh relative to each other, but you know, I'm not worried about a tenth of a second, whatever. But the surprise for me was how capable the full frame car is when you've been led to believe that the Chrysler unibody was the only one that drove well. And if you were on a track, these are definitely the better performing car. But the full frame car has a ride that is a really nice compromise between good handling and isolation from the harsh world. You guys let me know which one you'd rather have. Sooner or later we'll be able to do 57, 8, and 61 as well. So I'm going to keep building these forward look cars because I'm a huge fan. There was a list of these that I wanted as a kid, and I'm putting my 10-year-old self's dream garage together here very slowly. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the show this week. As always, a terrific time putting it together. A little different action this week. We had talked about doing this 1959 versus 1960 comparison for several years now, and the time kept getting away on me, so I decided last week that it was now or never, and we had just enough good weather left to do it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I decided that this week's video would just be that because there wasn't going to be much point in putting a 10-minute feature on something else kind of either in the middle of it or before it or after it, when that little segment there ran almost exactly an hour anyway. Of course, doesn't mean that we haven't been working on all the rest of the projects. We'll be back next week continuing with the 1959 Buick project, both sheet metal work and transmission work, and I will be keeping at the 1960 Impala trunk lid splice project, as well as finishing up, I hope very soon, the 1998 Volvo S90 salvage. That's coming along very well. Let me know what car you guys would prefer to have. I honestly, it would be a tough call for me. This one I think means more to me because I did the work on it, whereas this is a nice original car. So if I could only keep one, I would keep the one that I built. But since I don't have to make that choice, I'm very happy to have them both. Oh! These have arrived. I just picked them up from the printer and we are boxing them up this weekend. So if you ordered a 2025 Cold War Motors calendar, thank you so much. They are going to be hopefully all in the mail by the end of this week. It came out very well, and it is something I'm very proud of, and I hope to keep doing them. So thank you guys ever so much, everybody who ordered one. As usual, thank you so much to the patrons of the show. You guys make it possible to save the cars and make the videos. The show is for you. Never get tired of saying that. Thank you guys. Thanks also to anybody who pitched into the tip jar through the PayPal or Super Thanks option. It means a lot, and it does help us put these machines back together, and I will keep at it as long as I am able to do it. As always, I would ask, if you think you are subscribed, please double check. I do get notes every week from people who have been unsubscribed by our friends at YouTube. Anyway, if you're not subscribed, please consider. I'm really trying to get the channel up over 70,000 sometime soon. I guess that is all. Thank you guys again for watching. We'll see everybody next week. Cheers. This is a regular contributor.
Same old shit.